I had to leave some holes where there was an old rotten stump in the ground, and you're better off getting those.
I had to leave some holes because there was an old, rotting stump in the ground, and you should get those. What they found in Otto Kilcher's locked root cellar has stunned and shocked his family to the core. It was found not long ago, less than 72 hours ago. Already, the damage could destroy everything the Kilchers have worked for decades. They thought they knew Alaska, but this is not it. The finding began with a teen who was interested in fixing a broken hinge. August Kilcher, Kilcher's youngest son, was exploring the edges of the farm when he saw something strange near the old root cellar that his grandfather Otto had locked up for years. The heavy oak door, which had been through many Alaskan winters, hung there. A little jar. The padlock that had always kept it safe was broken and rusted in the dirt. August had always heard stories about the root cellar. When people asked Otto about it, he always gave vague replies and harsh warnings to stay away. His family knew what his limits were. For Otto Kilcher was a person who liked his own space. A pioneer who had spent more than 7 decades making a way to live in one of the harshest places on Earth. And for a young man who had grown up watching his family's successes and failures on national TV, interest was a strong force. August opened the door more. The springs made a noise. Protest. He stopped when a rush of cold air came out of the darkness below. It smelled bad. When wet ground is mixed with something else, it makes us feel uneasy. He yelled for his dad. Not an answer. That afternoon, it was quiet at the farm. A lot of the family had gone to Homer to get groceries. August was by himself. He carefully walked down the wooden steps, using the flashlight on his phone to see in the dark. The beam went along stone walls that were lined with old, mostly empty shelves. But stacked against the wall in the far corner were dozens of sealed bins, metal boxes, glass jars, and plastic cases. The labels on some of them were handwritten and had worn off over time. August moved slowly toward him, and his heart was pounding in his chest. There was something off about this place and the fact that it had been kept secret for so long. He got down on his knees and opened the first box. He felt his blood freeze when he saw what was inside. There are hundreds of photos. Some were new and made on new photo paper. Some were decades old, with yellowed and curled ends. But it wasn't just family pictures or memories of the farm. August didn't know the people in the pictures. From a distance, surveillance-style pictures were taken, and Otto's clear handwriting was written on the backs of the journals with dates, times, and places. Then he found the diaries. 3 notebooks wrapped in leather with Otto's careful writing inside. August couldn't fully understand the pictures that were drawn on page after page of notes, calculations, and records. A lot of thoughts were going through his head as he turned the pages. His hands were shaking. He picked up the phone and called his dad. He didn't wait for an answer this time. Something he said on the phone would change everything. Dad, you need to get home now. Right now I'm in Grandpa's root cellar. What's down here will shock you. Hidden truths under the farm. Since Yule and Ruth Kilcher built it in the 1940s, the Kilcher homestead has been a sign of strength and freedom. ATS, Otto, and the others were their children. As they grew up, they showed the values of independence that would later captivate millions of watchers on. Alaska is the last uncharted land. But there had always been tensions and hidden conflicts that the cameras never caught, even though the story was a heartwarming one about a family staying together and surviving. Otto Kilcher, who is now in his early 70s, had always been the practical one, the handyman, the person who could figure out what was wrong. Otto, his brother, was interested in music and a more philosophical way of life. Otto, on the other hand, was more interested in tools, structures, and solutions. He built the homestead's infrastructure and was the only person who could fix anything with wire and drive. But Otto's behavior had changed over the last 18 months, according to his family. He shut himself off more, working alone in his workshop for long periods of time or going missing for whole afternoons without giving a reason. His wife Charlotte told other people she was worried. Family members having secret talks. Otto was always on his own, but this was different. He looked busy and maybe even worried. When Otto's son Shane Kilcher talked about the root cellar with his father last summer, he remembered a straight question. Afterward, Shane told his friends, "I just wanted to know what was down there." He looked at me like I had done something wrong. He told me I had to respect his space and that it was just for storage. It wasn't like him to say it that way. It almost seemed like a threat. In the 1960s, when the family was still having trouble with the basics of life, the root cellar was built. Cellars of roots were places to store food were very important in Alaska because it got very cold in the winter and fresh food was hard to come by. However, as the years went by and more modern conveniences came out, most of the Kilchers stopped using their old ways of storing things. The Otto cellar should no longer be needed. Still, he took great care of it. He changed the door 3 times. Over 3 times, he made the lock stronger and made it very clear that no one could get in without his approval. The family had stuck to that rule. They each had their own lives and parts of the farm to take care of. They were famous and had a lot of money because of the show, but it made family relationships more difficult. Everyone knew to give each other room so that they wouldn't fight over small things. Of family unity and how they look in public. But when August found it, that tiny piece was broken. Ivan got to the house an hour after getting his son's voicemail. He saw August sitting outside the root cellar. He was pale and looked like he was scared. The containers were brought to the ground and set up in the grass, looking like evidence at a crime scene. At first, Ivan was mad at his son for breaking into Otto's space without permission and making him feel uncomfortable. But his anger went away as soon as he saw what was inside. On muttered as he turned the pages of one of the journals, "This doesn't make any sense. What was Dad doing? Why did he keep all of this?" The pictures were the most upsetting part. Some showed places near Homer and the towns that are close by. Some people looked like they were taken in Anchorage, Seward, and even Fairbanks. There were normal things that the people in the pictures were doing, like shopping, walking, and sitting in cars. They were being watched, though. Someone was keeping track of their moves, and that person was off. The journals had full logs with dates and times that matched the pictures. Patterns, routines, and observations written down in notes made it seem like there had been ongoing spying for years or even decades. But there were no reasons or background information that would have made any of this make sense or be right. By evening, everyone in the family knew. Otto showed up at Otto's part of the farm with a serious look on his face. Charlotte broke down in tears and insisted that something had to be said. The younger people, like On, Shane, Nikos, and the others, were shocked and silent as they tried to figure out what this meant for the guy they thought they knew. One question stood out more than the rest. Where was Otto, and what would he say if he found out about this? The materials were shown. According to the Kilcher family, as they looked more closely at what was in the root cellar, Otto's secret actions became more clear and more upsetting. What looked like random monitoring at first turned into something much more sinister. More planned and organized. All 37 of the crates were given numbers, and each one was marked with a year from 1998 to the present. There were photos, printed papers, newspaper clippings, and handwritten notes in each container. They were all organized with the care of someone doing an in-depth investigation. While other family members watched and were too shocked to do anything, On and Shane sorted through the papers. The things they found painted a complicated and scary picture. Photos of a guy in his 40s were in container one that was marked with the year 1998. The pictures showed him in a number of places in and around Homer, including the grocery store, the harbor, and a bar. A worn-out newspaper story was stuck to the pictures. About a fishing accident that year that killed 3 people. Based on Otto's notes, he had been following this man for months before the crash. The last note in that year's journal said, "Confirmed, negligence proven, no official charges, justice incomplete." In 2004, Container 7 showed a mother and her teenage daughter. The surveillance pictures were more detailed and went back several months. There were copies of police reports and records from Child Protection Services attached. Even so, no one knew how Otto got his hands on such sensitive information. His notes showed that he had been keeping an eye on a case of domestic violence. The last child taken away from home. Mother charged. It didn't work until it was forced to. One design after another showed up. Otto had been keeping a close eye on people, specifically those involved in situations that, according to his detailed notes, showed a lack of justice or responsibility. Drunk drivers who got light sentences, bosses who took advantage of their workers, and a landlord who was accused of predatory behavior. Every case was written down in great detail. But it wasn't the monitoring itself that was the most upsetting thing. It looked like that's what happened afterward. Otto's writings sometimes wrote about events that seemed too random to be ignored. The careless fisherman from 1998 lost his business license 2 years later. During a surprise check, his boat was found to have major safety problems. The mother who was abusive in 2004 was charged with more crimes after new proof came to light. According to Otto's notes, he helped bring to light through private tips to the police. Not only had Otto been looking, he had also been getting involved. Shane found a separate notebook tucked under the others. It looked like it was the main log. It had 42 names from 27 years ago to now. Each name had a short explanation of what was seen as unfair and what happened in the end. A simple check mark was put next to some comments. Some of them had question marks. Some didn't have any notes at all, which suggests they were still going on. Otto was still keeping an eye on certain cases or events. He was being a vigilante, On said in a quiet voice that was a mix of shock and disbelief. Throughout the years, he did this while we built this farm, filmed the show, and taught our kids about family and values. There was more, though. Otto's actions hadn't stopped or even slowed down, as shown by the most recent containers. A local businessman who was accused of environmental violations was being watched in container 36 from just last year. Otto wrote down the man's daily activities and the names of the people he hung out with. He also gathered proof of illegal dumping that seemed to go beyond what the environmental authorities had found. Then there was container 37, the most recent year. An open case. Pictures of a man the family knew were inside. He had done contract work on the farm 3 years ago. His family had fond memories of him. He was hired to help with a big building job, but he quit quickly after a disagreement over payment. Otto said the man's work wasn't good enough and wouldn't pay the agreed-upon amount. The contractor said they would go to court, but they never did. The journal notes show that Otto thought the contractor had been taking unsafe shortcuts by using cheap materials that could have caused the structure to fail. He had been keeping an eye on the man's new jobs and making notes about other places where he thought similar carelessness was happening. The newest pictures were taken less than a month ago. Charlotte didn't say a word as her stepchildren told her what they had found. Her face was pale. She finally told me that he was upset about something, but I had no idea how he could keep this from all of us. How could he have done this all by himself for so long? The family had to make a terrible choice. In their hands was proof of behavior that could be classified as stalking, harassment, and maybe even illegal spying. But at first glance, the cases Otto was writing about seemed to involve real wrongs, situations where the court system had broken down or weak people had been harmed. Otto, was he a rogue who broke the law? Or was it that he had seen too much wrongdoing in his long life and chose to do something when no one else would? They began to understand that the answer might be both. Otto's silence and the fear of his family. Otto Kilcher went back to the farm just as it got dark. He was driving his old pickup truck down the familiar dirt road. He didn't know that his family was at Evan's house, or that the secret he had been keeping for almost 30 years had been revealed. He was called by Otts. They talked for a short time and were nervous. "I think we should talk to Otto tonight. Everybody is here." Otto's answer was also cut short. "What is it about? What do you know?" The line was dead silent for a long time. Then Otto just said, "I'll be there in 20 minutes, and hung up. For the family waiting inside, those 20 minutes felt like hours. They agreed that Otts, being the oldest brother, would start the talk. But everyone there knew that this argument would be different from anything else they had been through together. This wasn't a fight over landlines or bad feelings. This was about the most important question of all. Who was Otto Kilcher? Otto looked older than his years when he walked in the door. His face couldn't be read. It wasn't arrogant or sorry. He looked around the room at the people there. His brother, his wife, his kids, and his nieces and nephews. He looked at the containers stacked against the wall and felt something change in his body. "Otto, what the hell is all of this? We need answers. We need to understand what you've been doing." At stepped forward and asked, "Otto, what the hell is all of this?" Otto lowered himself into a chair with the careful thought of a man whose body had been tried by decades of hard work. He kept quiet for a long time with his hands in his lap. "It really does look like that," he finally said. Anyone who needed to be watched was being kept an eye on. Watched. Shane had a sharp voice. Dad, don't look at this. This is being creepy. This is fairness. Otto cut him off when his